All right, guys, we're homeless. But when you're focusing on simplifying, downsizing, or minimalism, a lot of people just focus in on getting rid of your material things and possessions. We've actually taken that a step further, and we're also trying to just declutter our whole life. And that's been a little bit more mentally and emotionally challenging.
So in this video, we're going to share with you the process we went through, like physically, mentally, and emotionally, of just simplifying and decluttering our lives and downsizing. And this is not just, like Jenny said, material possessions, but this was also just some bad habits and some things that we were doing in our lives that really we needed to get rid of. And stay tuned to the end of this video, because we're going to give you probably the most important thing you're going to want to know and what we learned through this process. So if you're trying to do this for yourself, or you're thinking about doing this, you want to stay tuned, because we'll give you that most important thing that really we learned through this whole process.
We're embracing the next chapter by simplifying our lives, exploring our dreams, and connecting with what truly matters. This is definitely an experience, and on this journey we've learned that it's super important to focus on what you're gaining in the process, such as like more time, energy, money in your pocket, those kind of things, and not focusing on what you might be losing.
Let's define what we're talking about when we talk about clutter. So when we're talking about clutter, what we're talking about is anything that doesn't bring value to our lives. So what we're trying to do through this process is add more value to our lives, okay? The second thing we would say is that anything that doesn't bring you joy or happiness in your life. So what we want to do is we want to add and gain joy and happiness from this. Now, I'll tell you right now, if you're like, well, my job doesn't bring me happiness, so we're not telling you to get rid of your job unless you can, do that financially. But you want to think about that as, what are the things that are going to bring me more joy, more happiness in my life? And then the third thing is the stuff, or, the traditional material possessions. We're going to talk about that as well. And what we learned through this process is there are certain things that we really love, and other things that maybe we have duplicates of, or things that
we'd feel guilty getting rid of.
Yeah, we bought it and it's just sitting, you never wear it, but it's sitting in the closet, or it's sitting on the shelf.
Or it's that gift you never used.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's things like that we're going to go through as well, and talk about how do we get all this stuff out of our lives. So physical and mental and emotional.
A better definition of simplicity is probably it's something that happens within, internally, and then it's expressed outwardly. Because once you declutter yourself emotionally and mentally, it really frees you up to leverage your time, energy, and talents toward things that matter most. And it helps you to really be present in every moment. So
step one in this process is really, I want you to go back to like what Stephen Covey, the author, said in 7 Habits, is begin with an end in mind and think of what's your goal? Where do you want to end up? Where are you at right now? And then where do you want to end up by simplifying, downsizing, or decluttering your life? So, for example, if you're like we had a, 2,600 square foot house, a pool, all sorts of outdoor stuff, 26 years together of, accumulating stuff. And if where you're at right now is a 1, and, on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 10 is living out of a backpack, where would you feel comfortable in this, decluttering or simplifying or downsizing process? So, if you're at a 1 right now, maybe a 2 or 3 is moving into an apartment or a condo. Maybe, a 4 or 5 would be going as far as moving into like a tiny house. Maybe a 7 or 8 is doing like van life or something like that. So you kind of look at that, and then you figure out, where would I really feel comfortable going to in this process? And then ask yourself, okay, if my comfort level is a 5 or a 6, what would it feel like if I went to a 7? What would it take for me to get to that next step? And that's kind of the mental process we went through to going through this whole decluttering and minimalizing and downsizing process.
After 20 plus years of moving all over the world and parenting, we really did accumulate a lot of things. So I'm glad we've had some time the last few months to really intentionally look at everything that we own, because there are some really sentimental things that I would never want to let go of, like baby books and photo albums and things like that. But there's also some other things that you just hang on to, like my great-grandparents' old record collection, or their doily collection, or the 10 backpacks that somebody ordered on eBay.
What? They were a great deal.
So while we're working really hard to just declutter and get rid of a lot of the material things in our life, we're also working hard to get rid of anything that doesn't add value to our life as well. And that's one of the reasons Lance and I have decided to renovate a vintage RV, to eliminate a lot of the financial stress that we've been feeling, so that we can be financially free and travel and spend more time with the ones that we love.
So I know, when you hear or you see people, they're like moving into a tiny house or doing van life or moving full-time in an RV like us, that may seem way outside of your comfort zone. And I think if you would have asked us a year ago if we could have done this, we would have been like, you're crazy. That's way outside of our comfort zone. But what we want you to realize, and what we're saying here is, you again, focus on your goals, focus on what you're going to gain through this process. I mean, for us to be able to renovate a vintage RV and live in it full time for a year, we're able to put an extra $2,000 a month into our pocket to be able to just, finally get rid of all debt. And then in the end of that, we get to be financially free, retire early. We get to travel wherever we want to, and just spend time doing, the things that we really love to do. So again, it's focusing on that, what are we going to gain and what's the value added to this? Not necessarily what are you going to lose.
We've already gained so much time, actually. We've noticed the first weekend of living in our RV, when we usually, in our big old house, we would have been spending all weekend doing yard work and housework and things. I spent like 15 minutes cleaning the RV. We have no yard work now, so we spent the Saturday checking out a new barbecue place, winery we've been wanting to see, and a mead room.
Yeah.
So we had the best time, and so I've already noticed some benefits.
Yes, we're already realizing the value that we're gaining by going through and doing this process.
There's billions of dollars spent on marketing campaigns to try to convince us that we need the latest and greatest things to make us happy. But with Lance and I, we're seeing more and more that time and experiences and people are way more important to us than the newest phone or car or boat.
So step 2 in this process of decluttering your life and downsizing is really to put a date on the calendar that you feel comfortable with, that you want to be done with your process. And then what you can do is you can start back planning and breaking these tasks down into manageable and breaking, these tasks down into like manageable bite-sized pieces. So you can say, okay, by this weekend, I want to be done with this room. By this weekend, I want to be done with the garage or the outside. And that's one way you can do it, is going like room by room.
So another thing you can do is break it down into items, say like shoes or coats. You might have a few coats in your trunk of your car, in your garage, in the coat closet. And it's good to just put them all together in a big pile in front of you and see like how many of these same items that you actually have, and that can help. Just pick one that you love.
So simplifying also means slowing down the pace of your life. I don't know about you guys, but when we were raising our kids, it was like we were in a hectic rat race all the time. We would run from meeting to appointment to kids event to social event to dinner to homework to one thing after another, and it seemed like we could never get off that hamster wheel. And we would walk, talk, eat fast all the time, and it was like we didn't even notice it. It just slowly happened over time to where we were just going at this crazy pace. And it wasn't until we got around people operating their lives at a slower pace that we began to realize that we were really living this hectic, hurried lifestyle, and it was causing a lot more stress in our lives. So we realized that we needed to be very intentional about slowing down the pace of our lives, about taking time for people, taking time for experiences, taking the road less traveled. And that's all a part of that process of being intentional about simplifying your life.
We started to realize this, honestly, like probably 10 moves ago, when the movers would come and get all of our junk, put it in this big semi truck, they'd drive off, and we'd be living out of a suitcase for, a couple of weeks while we were moving to a different place and starting new again. And we would have the best memories and the best times just with the ones that we love.
Yeah, road trips.
And having awesome experiences together. And then, the movers would pull up with the semi with all of our junk again, and our house would be full of boxes, and the stress, I would just feel the stress come on us again.
Yeah, and I think if you think back to in your own life, like I can't think of any time in my life where I had, a really great memory that involved a possession. All of the really great memories in my life revolve around people and experiences, not around material possessions at all.
Another part of simplifying our life is we've been focusing less on the things we cannot control, such as what the latest politician said or the latest celebrity and what their family is doing. That stuff really doesn't matter in our life. And so, and also the American Psychological Association has done research, and it is so much healthier when we cut some of this social media and news out of our life.
Yeah, and we've just seen this, like we've have friends, family, acquaintances who, they're just constantly complaining and negative and toxic, whether it's in person or on social media. And we've just kind of made the personal decision to say like, hey, we love these people. We are there for them if they need us, but we're not going to engage in that toxic behavior, that complaining or debating or whatever. We're just choosing to not be involved in that because it's not healthy emotionally or mentally to be involved in that type of stuff. So it's really healthy, and Jenny can tell you that it's just healthy to unplug sometimes from that stuff.
Yeah, as a mental health professional, there has been so many studies that show that less social media, less news watching can cut down on your anxiety, your stress, your fatigue, and you can actually have more restful sleep and just a healthier overall well-being.
So please understand, we're not saying, cut out all your media consumption or whatever, but I think you have to be intentional about what are you focusing on. And like Jenny said, maybe you focus your media consumption on things that are positive, things that are uplifting, things that are, not getting involved in those, negative, toxic discussions or the things that are divisive in nature. Just stay out of those things and focus more on, all the positive things out there that there is in this world of media.
Right.
And even like I would say here, on all the social media channels, on YouTube like this, there are people that are putting out really positive, great stuff. And that's the type of stuff you want to consume. Don't get all caught up in that negative stuff because it's just going to drain you emotionally and mentally, and it's just toxic, like drinking poison.
Yeah, something we learned overseas, living overseas, is not only the importance of slowing down, but also if there's something really important in the news, we're going to hear about it. You don't have to worry. You don't have to watch the news every hour and hear all the drama or the commentary or what the latest politician has to say about it.
Yeah, and I would say that is, a lot of times when we lived overseas, people would say, oh, did you hear about this latest thing going on? And in the U.S. news, it was like, they were talking about it for weeks, and overseas it was like nobody else really cared about it. It wasn't a big deal. So for us, we really took that as a clue, as like, hey, if it's really important, we're going to hear about it, and if it's not, we don't need to waste our time with that toxic stuff.
So step 3 is if you have multiple of one item, for example, like 10 flannel shirts, you're going to want to really just look at those and pick the 2 or 3 that you love and that you'll miss if you don't have them. And again, you want to focus on what you're gaining, not what you're losing. And whatever ones you didn't choose that you love, those are left on the chopping block.
Yeah, and I think this was a little bit more difficult process for us because not only is there emotional or sentimental attachment with some things, but we equated dollar signs with some of the items. It's like, I paid good money for this thing and now I got to, get rid of it. And, and I was thinking in my mind, things like, well, what if there's a flood in the Southwest? I'm going to need these galoshes or muck boots, which is really ridiculous when you think about it. But it's a hard thing to let go of something when there's a monetary value attached to it. So we just had to get really comfortable with that and realizing that even though we're letting this go, somebody else is probably going to be able to use this and it's still going to have value for them.
Simplifying also means saying yes less for us. I know for 20 plus years we were saying yes to like school engagements, work, social engagements, like volunteering, organizations, you name it. We were busy from morning till night, and we've really had to work on not feeling guilty about saying no and just working on balance, finding that healthy balance in our life.
Yeah, and it's not like we're just eliminating this stuff from our schedule. No. I mean, we're still going to do this stuff. But it's being, again, and being intentional about being okay with saying no, taking back some of our time and in order for us to simplify our lives and not just have that hectic schedule that we've had for so long.
And you might be thinking, as you're going through your material things, what am I going to do with all this stuff I'm getting rid of? And I found Craigslist is kind of outdated because that's where I was trying to sell my things at first.
You get killed on Craigslist.
So he let me know about the marketplace on Facebook, and oh my gosh, within like a couple hours we had a flood of people asking about our things, and this really helped me honestly with some of those things like the couch, for example, that I saw the kids grow up on and we spent all those Christmases on that I kind of had an emotional attachment to, but of course was way too big for us to keep. It helped me to see and meet the family with these cute little kids that they had and just hear a little bit about their story and just to know that it's going to a good home. I know that sounds silly.
Sounds like a dog. We're giving away, he's been with us for so long. He's such a good dog. Couch.
But it helped me with this whole emotional attachment, I guess,
yeah,
issue.
But you also got to think of the time with this too, because I will tell you, if you've never sold anything on Facebook, people will waste your time. And so if you're just putting stuff on there that's $20, it's like, is it because you're literally going to have a bunch of people that are going to, spend hours and hours asking you, is this available? Is this available? Is this available? Can I come see it? And probably out of the 10 or 20 people that are going to ask you about something, one person is actually going to show up to buy it. So is it really worth all that time for $20? Well, maybe not. But if it's like, a $400 TV, maybe that's something a little bit different.
Right, yeah,
so the other option to look at too is donating stuff. And I know for us, if you donate things, especially to, some nonprofits or some places that may need these, you can get a tax deduction for that. So that may be beneficial for you. If you're in a situation where, hey, I need some more tax deductions, go ahead and donate those things. They're going to somebody that's going to use them, and then you get some benefit from the tax deduction as well.
And then if you're like us and you're moving into like a tiny house or an RV, you're going to need to probably have storage. We have like a 12 by 12 storage unit for like the things that we would have totally missed. So we had to really look at that, what we were going to be storing, because we're paying for the storage facility.
Yeah, so you have to really budget for that. Like if you're going to, some people don't store anything, and man, we had some people who are like, all we did was took 2 suitcases and hit the road, and like, you guys are awesome, But for us, we had to store some stuff, and we had to, budget for that, and then think of too as well, can I do the outside storage or do I need to do climate controlled? Like we had some antique furniture, like heirlooms and stuff that we really wanted to be able to pass on to kids or grandkids.
Right.
So we had to, pay that extra for the climate controlled, storage, but you have to take that into consideration and realize then too, okay, what can I fit in there and what needs to go and what needs to stay, because everything obviously can't stay. But that's a budget item that you really have to consider if you're going to store your items.
So this brings us to the most important point that we've learned through this process, and it's not about the material stuff at all. We learned that it's just filling our lives with more positive people, experiences, and just spending more time with the ones that we love.
Yeah, and I think this process is really, we've been able to declutter and simplify our lives. So we have more time, we have more money, we have more energy to really invest in those relationships and experiences. And that's been the most positive thing we've learned from this whole experience.